My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32 years old, and this is how I took revenge on the people who tried to bury me, both figuratively and literally. I didn't wake up in a bed of white sheets or surrounded by beeping monitors. No, I woke up choking on dirt. Cold, damp earth pressed against my lips, filled my mouth, clogged my nose. My arms were pinned against my sides. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming. That suffocating paralysis of nightmares where no sound escapes your throat. Then the weight of the soil shifted as I thrashed, and panic ripped me wide awake. I was underground. Every instinct screamed to stay still, to preserve what little air there might have been. But instinct can be drowned by terror. My hands clawed upward, nails splitting, skin tearing as I scraped through roots and clay. The earth gave grudgingly, caving in clumps that landed across my face. My chest burned, lungs searing. I remember thinking, this is it. They won. But then my fingers broke through. Cold night air seeped through the cracks, a whisper of salvation. I dug harder, writhing upward until I dragged myself from the ground like something reborn or something resurrected. The moon was pale and merciless, hanging above the clearing. My body shook with exhaustion, but the realization kept me upright. Someone had buried me here, behind the cabin in the woods. Someone had stood over me, watched me sink into that pit, and believed they were closing the final chapter of my life. But the truth is, I was never supposed to wake up that night. When I finally staggered inside the cabin, I caught sight of myself in a cracked mirror above the sink. My face was a mask of dirt and dried blood, streaked with tears I hadn't even realized were falling. I looked like a ghost, but I was breathing, and that meant I wasn't done. The hospital came later, after I stumbled onto a dirt road and flagged down a trucker. Broken ribs, a concussion, dehydration. They called it an accident. They told me I was lucky to be alive, but luck had nothing to do with it. As I lay in the sterile hospital room, tubes snaking into my arms, I replayed every moment I could remember leading up to that night. The laughter over shared drinks, the sudden dizziness that wasn't just exhaustion, the darkness that swallowed me whole. And in that darkness, just before everything slipped away, I remembered voices, familiar voices, calm, steady, unhurried. They weren't strangers. That's the part no one believes when I tell it. That the people who buried me alive weren't enemies, weren't faceless monsters lurking in shadows. They were people I trusted, people who smiled with me, ate with me, embraced me, people I loved, and they thought I'd stay buried. I grew up in a town you could drive through in under 10 minutes. Cornfields, a single diner, a football team that was the pride of every fall Friday night. My mother raised me there after my father decided family life wasn't for him. I don't remember much about the day he left. I was 6, maybe 7. What I do remember is my mother's silence at the dinner table, the way her hands shook as she passed me the peas, the way she worked 2 jobs without complaint just to keep the lights on. She never said it outright, but I understood early. Stability is something you build for yourself, brick by careful brick. I grew up dreaming of a home where nothing cracked, nothing slipped away. That dream seemed within reach the day I met Ryan Miller. Ryan wasn't just handsome, though God he was. He was magnetic. He had this way of walking into a room and pulling every eye toward him without even trying. His laugh was the kind that made people laugh with him, even if they hadn't caught the joke. When we first met at a friend's party, he spotted me across the kitchen and cut through the crowd like there was no one else in the world. For the first time in my life, I felt chosen. He was ambitious too, always talking about the future, about the business he wanted to start, about the life we'd build together. He made me believe in possibility. He made me believe in us. And then there was Hannah. If Ryan was the love of my life, Hannah was the soul of it. We met in kindergarten, two shy girls clutching crayons at a table too big for us. She leaned over and told me I colored the sun wrong, that it should be yellow, not orange. From that moment, we were inseparable. Sleepovers, whispered secrets under the covers, late-night drives when we were teenagers with nowhere to go, but everywhere to dream. She was the person I told everything to, the person who knew the sound of my laugh and the weight of my silence. She wasn't just my best friend. She was my sister in every way that mattered. By 28, I thought I had everything figured out. I had a teaching job at the local elementary school, a modest but steady career that gave me purpose. I had Ryan, who dropped to one knee on a snowy evening and asked me to marry him with hands that shook from excitement more than cold. And I had Hannah, my maid of honor, the one who teared up with me as we flipped through bridal magazines, the one who promised she'd stand beside me on the most important day of my life. I remember looking at that snapshot of my life, the ring on my finger, the laughter over wine with Hannah, the lesson plans spread across my desk, and thinking, this is it. This is the stability I've been chasing since I was a little girl. But if you peeled back the picture-perfect surface, there was always a sliver of doubt inside me, a whisper I tried to ignore. Maybe it came from growing up without a father, from watching my mother get abandoned. Maybe it came from all those years of being told I was sweet but never enough. I carried that vulnerability like a hidden bruise, tucked beneath the surface. I was always the one who loved harder, held tighter, feared losing everything. So when Ryan told me he loved me, I clung to it. When Hannah said I was her sister, I believed her. And when my life began to look like the dream I'd carried since childhood, I was almost pathetically grateful. That's the thing about gratitude, though. It blinds you. It makes you overlook the cracks, like the way Ryan's phone would buzz late at night, and he'd tilt the screen away. Or how Hannah would change the subject when I asked if she was seeing anyone. Or those fleeting, strange silences when the three of us were together. Silences that felt like a current just beneath the surface. One I refused to acknowledge. If you told me then that Ryan and Hannah were about to destroy me, I would have laughed in your face. I would have sworn on everything I loved that the two people I trusted most would never hurt me. But the signs were there. I just didn't want to see them. It was a Tuesday night, late spring, the kind of evening where the air still held a faint warmth from the sun. I remember because I'd left work early. The school had called an emergency faculty meeting that ended sooner than expected. I decided to surprise Ryan with takeout from his favorite Thai place, the kind of small gesture that had always made him grin like a boy. I let myself into the apartment, juggling a bag of food, keys, purse. At first, everything seemed ordinary. The faint hum of music drifted from the living room, shoes by the door, laughter, low, intimate. Then I heard Hannah's voice. I froze. She wasn't supposed to be there. She didn't have a key. And the sound of her laugh, the softness of it, the way it curved, wasn't the kind of laugh you share with your best friend's fiancé. I stepped closer, my heart beating in my throat, and that's when I heard Ryan. Emily was never what I wanted. She was safe, comfortable, but not you, Hannah. You're fire. You're everything. And then Hannah's laugh again. Sharp, delighted, cruel. The takeout bag slipped from my hands. Plastic containers crashed to the floor, scattering curry and rice across the tile. I don't know if they heard that sound first, or the gasp that tore from my throat. They looked up. Ryan, shirt half unbuttoned. Hannah, flushed, her hair a mess around her face. The moment froze. Every detail burned into my memory. The way Ryan's expression shifted, not to guilt or shame, but to annoyance, as if I had intruded. The way Hannah smirked, her eyes glittering with something I'd never seen before, something close to triumph. I couldn't breathe, my mouth filled with the taste of metal, as though I were swallowing pennies. My hands shook so violently I had to clutch the doorframe just to keep standing. "Emily," Ryan said, his voice flat, controlled, like he was negotiating a deal. "You're overreacting." Overreacting? The word cracked out of me, half sob, half laugh. I walk in on you, on this, and you tell me I'm overreacting? Hannah tilted her head, her smile small and cutting. Maybe if you'd been enough for him, this wouldn't have happened. That was the knife twist. Not the betrayal itself, but the deliberate cruelty of it. I don't remember crossing the room, but suddenly I was there, standing inches away from them, demanding answers I knew I'd never get. Ryan's eyes were ice, colder than I'd ever seen. The warmth, the devotion, the future he'd once spoken of, it was gone, stripped away, and in its place was a stranger. "I never loved you," he said simply. Those words gutted me. They were worse than any physical blow. The humiliation was total, like being stripped bare in the center of a crowded street. My life, the one I thought I'd built so carefully, so securely, had been a facade. I staggered back. My body felt alien, hollow. I couldn't even cry. The tears were trapped somewhere too deep. My voice came out a whisper. You were supposed to be my family." Hannah shrugged, almost bored. Things change. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not just my trust in them, but my trust in myself, my ability to believe in what was real, in what was good. The girl who had always clung to stability, to gratitude, was gone. I left the apartment that night with nothing but my purse, my phone, and a hollow cavern where my chest used to be. I walked the streets for hours, aimless, numb, while the city blurred around me. I thought the worst had already happened. I thought betrayal was the end of the story. But I was wrong. So very wrong. Because that night wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Their betrayal was deeper, darker, and far more deliberate than I could have imagined. And it nearly killed me. After the breakup, I told myself I'd survive. People get cheated on every day, I thought. People rebuild. I clung to that lie for as long as I could. But the truth is, my life didn't just crack. It collapsed. Within weeks, Ryan and Hannah were public. No shame, no hesitation. They posted photos of themselves at restaurants we used to go to, smiling in front of places where memories of us still clung like ghosts. Engagement pictures of mine still lingered on social media when their faces appeared in feeds. Happy, glowing, nauseatingly in love. And the world chose them. Friends I thought were mine drifted toward the light of Ryan's charisma, Hannah's charm. When I showed up at a mutual friend's party, conversations froze, and I felt like an intruder. Whispers followed me out the door. Soon, the invitations stopped coming. It wasn't just social, it was professional. Rumors began spreading at the school where I taught. Parents complained I was emotional, unstable, a distraction. I knew where it came from. Ryan's family had ties to the school board. One morning, the principal called me in, his eyes full of pity as he explained they were letting me go for the good of the students. That was the first time I broke. Not just a crack, a shattering. Teaching had been my anchor. Without it, I was adrift. The torment escalated. My car tires were slashed twice in 1 month. The police called it vandalism, told me it was probably kids. But the precision, the timing, told me otherwise. Anonymous notes slipped under my door. Go away. No one wants you here. Sometimes I'd come home to find my apartment disturbed. A picture frame tilted, a drawer open, nothing stolen but everything touched, violated. I started to believe I was losing my mind. That's what they wanted. To erase me quietly, to make me doubt myself until I simply disappeared. And for a while, I almost did. Nights blurred into bottles of wine, into pills to sleep, into mornings where getting out of bed felt impossible. I stopped answering calls from the few people still trying to reach me. My world shrank to four walls and the echo of voices I couldn't silence. But somewhere in the depths of that darkness, something refused to die. Maybe it was the girl who had watched her mother keep going, no matter how hard life pressed down. Maybe it was simple stubbornness. Whatever it was, a spark remained, dim, faint, but alive. Then came the night they decided to finish it. Ryan called me. His voice was soft, measured, the voice I used to trust. He said he wanted to talk, to apologize, to find some kind of closure. For a second, I believed him. That's how pathetic I was, still hoping for scraps of humanity from the man who'd gutted me. I agreed to meet him. We drove out toward the edge of town, past the familiar into the empty. He said he wanted privacy, a place we could speak freely. The roads grew narrower, the woods thicker. Something in me stirred, a warning I tried to bury. When he stopped the car near an old cabin, my stomach dropped. I opened my mouth to question him. But before the words left, the world went black, a blow to the back of my skull. The sound of Hannah's laugh, muffled, fading. And then, nothing. When I woke, it wasn't to the safety of a bed. It was to suffocating dirt pressing against my lips, against my lungs, crushing the breath from me. My arms pinned, my chest screaming for air. I was underground. The memory of that night will never leave me. The taste of soil, the panic, my fingernails tearing as I clawed at the earth, my ribs screaming as I thrashed against the weight above me. The split second where I thought, this is how I die. This is where it ends. But then, a crack. My fingers broke through to air. Cold, clean, glorious air. I dragged myself upward, inch by agonizing inch, until my body burst through the surface. I lay there under the moonlight, covered in dirt and blood, shaking with the miracle of breath. The truth was undeniable. Ryan and Hannah had tried to erase me, to bury me in the woods like trash, to end my existence as neatly as deleting a photo. But they failed. That night, something in me was reborn. The woman they buried, the one who doubted, who clung to gratitude, who believed in safety. She died under that dirt. And what crawled out of that grave was someone they'd never seen before. From that moment, I stopped being their victim. I didn't go to the police. I didn't run screaming for help. No one would have believed me anyway. The unstable ex-fiancé, the jealous best friend, the rumors that had already painted me as fragile and unhinged. Instead, I began rebuilding in secret. I learned to move quietly. to listen in shadows. I gathered evidence, text messages, receipts, photographs. I watched them from afar, noting every movement, every weakness. I wrote everything down, filling notebooks with details until my pain hardened into purpose. Every breath I took from that. Revenge isn't a lightning strike. It's not sudden, clean, or simple. It's patience. It's discipline. It's a knife sharpened slowly, deliberately, until the edge gleams. I spent months planning, watching, waiting. The first blow landed where Ryan was most vulnerable, his career. He'd always bragged about being untouchable at the firm, about the creative accounting that padded his numbers. He thought no one would ever find the paper trail, but he hadn't counted on me, on the woman who knew his passwords, his patterns, his secrets. One anonymous email, carefully packaged with documentation I'd spent weeks assembling, landed on the desk of his company's compliance officer. Within days, whispers spread through his office like wildfire. Fraud, embezzlement, investigations. The golden boy who once held every room's attention now couldn't step into an elevator without eyes cutting into him. I didn't even have to be there to see it. I could imagine his grin falter, the sweat to bead at his temple, the first fracture in his empire. But Ryan wasn't my only target. Hannah had always built her identity on being the perfect professional, smart, competent, beloved by her boss. She wore loyalty like a badge of honor. So it was poetic justice when an envelope arrived on her boss's doorstep. Photos, texts, proof of her affair with him. Proof that loyalty meant nothing to her. His wife received the same package. By the end of the week, Hannah's name was whispered in corners, spat like poison. She wasn't the dependable golden girl anymore. She was a liability, a homewrecker. She lost her job, her mentor, her carefully curated reputation, shredded overnight. Still, it wasn't enough. Ruin alone wasn't justice. I wanted them to feel what I had felt. The suffocating loneliness, the humiliation that scalds your skin, the powerlessness that makes you question your own worth. And then, fate handed me the perfect weapon. Ryan and Hannah still thought I was gone, irrelevant, a ghost. They grew careless, bold. I followed them one evening to a bar on the edge of town. I sat in the back, unnoticeable, phone recording in my pocket. I listened as they laughed over drinks, as Ryan bragged about how they had taken care of Emily once and for all. She was weak, Ryan said, his voice thick with arrogance. We buried her, and she still couldn't stay gone. Maybe next time we'll make sure the dirt's deeper. Hannah's laugh cut through me, sharp and familiar. No one even misses her. She erased herself. That was the moment I knew. Evidence of fraud and affairs was satisfying. But this was the nail in their coffin. I clipped the recording, cleaned the audio, and sent it to the police. Anonymous, precise, accompanied by documents detailing the threats, the stalking, the slashed tires. For the first time, the story wasn't my word against theirs. It was their own voices. The confrontation wasn't in some dark alley or dramatic showdown in the woods. No, it happened under the harsh lights of justice, where everyone could see. At the courthouse, during what Ryan thought was a routine hearing for his financial crimes, the detectives approached. I watched from the crowd as confusion spread across his face, followed by dawning horror when the cuffs clicked around his wrists. Hannah stood frozen, her face pale, until an officer turned toward her. She wasn't cuffed immediately, but the implication was clear. Accomplice, conspirator. She was tangled in the web they had spun together. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just watched. Watched as Ryan's smirk, that arrogant tilt of his mouth I once thought charming, collapsed into panic. Watched as Hannah's eyes darted, searching desperately for someone to save her, someone to believe her. No one did. The same silence that had once swallowed me now swallowed them. The people who had tried to bury me, who had nearly succeeded, were being buried themselves, not under dirt this time, but under the weight of their own corruption, their own cruelty. As Ryan was led away, he caught my eye. For a second, recognition flickered, a ghost of me, standing alive in the place he thought he'd erased me. His lips parted like he wanted to speak, but no sound came. And in that silence, I found my catharsis. It wasn't joy, not exactly. It wasn't triumph. It was something colder, steadier. The balance had shifted. Justice, imperfect and delayed, had finally arrived. I walked out of the courthouse into the sunlight, my shadow long against the pavement. I was no longer the woman who had been betrayed, no longer the woman who had been buried. I was the woman who survived, and survival is the sharpest revenge of all. After the storm came the silence. Ryan was indicted on multiple charges: financial fraud, obstruction, and eventually attempted murder. The audio I'd leaked made its way into evidence, sealing his fate. For a man who had built his entire identity on power and prestige, prison was the one cage he couldn't charm his way out of. Hannah didn't wait for the trial. She slipped out of town quietly, but not quietly enough. By then, her name was already mud. She was the other woman in a dozen gossip threads, the disgraced employee whispered about over office coffee. She thought she could outrun her shame, but I knew the truth. You can't outrun who you are. And me, I was still standing. The weeks that followed were a blur of police statements, therapy sessions, and long, sleepless nights. Survival isn't clean. Revenge doesn't wipe the slate spotless. There were mornings I woke drenched in sweat, lungs aching with the memory of dirt pressing down. There were days I felt the echo of humiliation, the sting of betrayal, as fresh as if it had just happened. But there was something else too, a steadiness, a strength. For the first time in my life, I wasn't defined by the people around me. Not by a father who walked away, not by a fiancé who betrayed me, not by a friend who carved a knife into my back. I was defined by what I'd endured, what I'd overcome. Slowly, painfully, I began rebuilding. I went back to teaching, not to the same school. That chapter was closed, but to a smaller program that welcomed me without judgment. I taught on my terms, with boundaries I never would have dared set before. And when I stood in front of a classroom again, I realized something vital. My scars didn't make me weaker. They made me more human, more present. The children sensed it too. They leaned in closer, listened harder. Somehow, they knew I understood what it meant to fight through fear. My life wasn't perfect. It never would be. The cracks were permanent, etched into me like fault lines. But I learned to stop hiding them. They weren't weaknesses. They were reminders. Revenge didn't erase the pain. It didn't give me back the years I'd lost or the innocence that had been ripped from me. What it gave me was something far rarer, far more valuable. Control. They thought they'd silence me forever. Instead, they gave me a voice I never knew I had. Now, when I walk through town, I don't bow my head. I don't shrink. I meet eyes. I let people whisper, let them wonder. Because I know what they don't. I face the grave and come back. I've clawed my way out of the earth, out of betrayal, out of everything they tried to bury me with, and I'm still here. I don't believe in happy endings, not anymore. But I believe in survival. I believe in the fire that comes from breaking and remaking yourself. The woman they tried to kill, the one who loved too much, trusted too blindly, believed too completely. She's gone. What remains is someone stronger, sharper, someone who knows her worth not because others see it, but because she carved it into her own bones. This is not a story of tragedy. It's a story of reclamation. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You don't bury Emily Carter. Not now. Not ever. Some nights, the memory returns in my sleep. I dream of the dirt pressing against my chest, the air thinning, the panic clawing at my throat. I wake with the taste of earth on my tongue, gasping, heart racing like it's still happening. Those dreams remind me that survival isn't just a past tense. It's something I carry with me every single day. But I've learned to reframe it. Every time I dream of that grave, I remind myself, I got out, I survived. I wasn't the one who stayed buried. They were. Ryan in a prison cell, his legacy crumbled. Hannah in self-imposed exile, her name a curse whispered in corners. They thought they were erasing me, but in the end, they erased themselves. I still carry scars, inside and out. I still wrestle with shadows, with doubt, with the weight of what they tried to take from me. Healing isn't a straight line. Some days I stumble, some days I ache. But every time I feel the darkness creeping back, I remind myself of the woman who clawed her way out of the ground. That woman wasn't weak. She wasn't disposable. She wasn't the sum of her betrayals. She was reborn. And so now, when I tell my story, I don't whisper. I don't soften the edges. I let it stand, raw and unflinching, because this isn't just about what was done to me. It's about what I became in spite of it. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 32 years old, and I am living proof that some women don't stay buried.